My experience is in the realm of communication, trying to accurately communicate what needs to be done to a team that English is not their first language. So many times I would communicate a concept. I would try to communicate a concept, and then I would ask the engineer to repeat it back to me, what they were going to go do. And what they would repeat back to me would be the opposite of what I thought I had explained. So I'd have to change my English and try again a different way. So that is something I learned, that I had to use simple terms and speak to the Vietnamese team in not give as much explanation, just say what I needed done and not explain it as much until I'd been there a few years, and then I could start explaining. They would come back and ask, and why, tai sao, and I would explain the why behind what I was wanting them to do. Or they would come to me with a question, and I would answer them, and I would have them repeat back what they thought I told them. And many times they didn't understand what I was saying, so I had to try again. A different set of words, simplify it, change it around a little bit. Now, if you did it in writing, if you wrote something down in an email, most of the time, if you kept the language simpler, they got it. They would understand it. But when you get into something that is a little more detailed, and you're using either jargon or idioms or terms, they would get emails from they email other engineers back in the design the design team and manufacturing engineering back in Eugene, Oregon.
Yep.
And they would get emails, and they would say, "I think I understand this," and they would have me read it, and they'd say, "Well, this is what I think it says, Randy," and I'd say, "No, they're saying the exact opposite of what you are about to go do." And they said, many times they would say, "I don't believe you." So we'd have a video conference, and I would say, "This is what the email said," and the Eugene team would say, "Yeah, Randy's right," and they're like, "What?" So after we did that a few times, they quit questioning whether I understood English better than them. So
okay,
it was funny,
that's
but I became the de facto person for the team to come and ask, am I understanding this email right? And after a few years, they were getting more and more. The percentage was going up of what they understood. Certain engineers got it right every time. Other ones had a harder time with it, so it would vary. But even the HR department would come when they would write something. They had to write something in English. They would come and have me proofread it, and I would read it like, I don't even understand what you're trying to say. So I would first have to go back and ask them, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to convey here? And once I understood what they're trying to convey, then I could rewrite it and help them to write it in something that, if English, is your first language, or if you're, European and you have a lot of English, that you would understand it. So there was I was used in a lot of ways to help the communication back and forth. Or when there was a problem in the factory, in the Vietnamese, they would email the Eugene team, and they would get an answer. Sometimes they would come to me, and they would explain the problem and say, or like the quality manager, Phong Nguyen, he would come to me and ask me, here's the problem, could you write the email for me? Because this is really technical. It's not a simple one. This is really some details, some subtleties in here. And I would write the email to the Eugene team, and it'd be a lengthy email because to get to subtleties, it has to be long. And they would write back, and we'd get a good answer. So when things required more subtle information, they would use me. If it was straightforward, they didn't need me. So, so I was used as a, communications conduit back and forth.
So the American would send them emails or instructions, and you make sure that the Vietnamese understand what you're saying.
Yes, and it got implemented right. Sometimes I'd go out on the production line and take a look and go, no, that's not exactly what they meant. They meant something different. And, so it'd take me a few times to try and get them. And sometimes I would have to get a Vietnamese that I knew understood English really well, communicate to them, and then they would go back and communicate to the manufacturing, the lead operators, the quality people, and other people that didn't. So even when I went out to the factory, I would speak some Vietnamese. I could go scanner tote or scanner sao, so a good scanner, bad scanner, But I would have to grab the Vietnamese and go the other way, and they would do exactly what I did, only in the reverse to the Vietnamese team. So I had to find some engineers that had really good English and use them. So it worked both ways. I could see it from their side, and they had to translate my English back to Vietnamese. So many times it was a comedy of errors,
Yeah.
But it was a very fun experience. The people treated me just so well. They treated me well because I'm educated. They treated me well because I'm Bach. I'm their uncle. I'm older than or about the age of their dad.
Definitely. That could be like something that would make you really respected because of the how you describe it. The hierarchy of the culture is that when you're older and more experienced, they would respect you more. Yeah.
So they treated me just very, very well. I learned in their culture, the Vietnamese culture, and I'm sure you know this well.
Yep.
They don't want to spend money. They want to do everything without money. They will do it the cheapest way. So in the U.S., when you have a handheld scanner you're going to use to read barcodes on your product going down the line, you'd pull something out of stock, a plastic holder. You'd mount it down, and so your handhelds would be mounted down to something plastic, and it'd last forever. And you pick it up, the handles, scan the barcode, set it back down on this plastic holder. Vietnamese would take cardboard and then make their own out of used cardboard and some shipping tape. They would create their own, and they would sit there and they would hang them on that for a few months until they wear out, and then they'd make another one, and they'd make another one, and another one. And they'd never buy one from stock, which we produce and sell these with our products. So that was interesting to me, that they are just so used to not spending money, not wasting anything. They are superb at
recycling.
Recycling.
Yeah.
I have one example. Even the last time I was there, I moved back to the U.S. in June of 2016, and in June of 2017, I went back. We were moving another manufacturing line, so I went back for about a 2-week visit as we moved a new product line there. And we have these stations where we focus our lenses on our product. And there's a rail that moves an image, a target, up and down. And the rail was malfunctioning. So in the U.S., what we do is we just swap the rail out and send the rail back and have it repaired or something like that, or we would mothball the old rail. The Vietnamese took a bad rail and another rail that had some other problems, ripped them all apart. They had 6 engineers on the floor, squatting on the floor, circling around these 2 rails, and ripped them all apart, and in one day remanufactured the rail and got it up and running. That was phenomenal. That they were that resourceful, and they made it work well. It had to be accurate down, to like a half a millimeter or something. It was just it was phenomenal. They got it up and running like that. So the way they solve problems is different than the U.S. team, and you have to just stand back and let them do what they do well, and just watch. So it's just a different way of solving a problem. They solve it without money, and then the U.S. engineers would like, okay, this is a problem. We're going to ship this rail back to the vendor, and we're going to get a new rail, and it'll be 2 weeks, and we can't do anything. Well, the Vietnamese said, no, we're not going to wait 2 weeks. We're going to do it today, and we're going to fix it today. And they did. So they would do that kind of thing over and over again throughout my time in Ho Chi Minh City.
So is that like a bad thing, or is that a good thing in your mind?
It's a good thing. It's good. It's not a bad thing. It takes some getting used to. You're not used to that. You're like worried that it's not going to come back together well, and but you have to let them do it, even though you're concerned that the accuracy may not be there. There may be some other problems, and then you learn over time that they really are doing it well. There are other times when they want to do something that saves money, which can be disastrous, and you have to absolutely come in and be firm and say, no, you cannot do this.
Yeah. Can you describe a story? Can you give me a story about it? Because
I could describe a story. We use glue in a few places in our products where we glue glass into the platters that are on the top of a scanner.
Yeah.
You know, the bioptic ones.
Yeah.
And we have a robot that puts it in and glue. And there's a leftover glue inside of the reservoir a little bit. It can't squeeze it all out. And this glue, it's very, very thick, and it was difficult for the manufacturer when they make the glue to get all the air bubbles out, and it starts sealing as soon as it starts hardening, as soon as it's exposed to air. And you don't want any contamination in. So the Vietnamese wanted to reclaim that glue. This glue is like $100 or something. It's expensive for a syringe, a large syringe of this glue. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to reclaim it and reuse it. And so they were gathering it, and they were going to put it back into another syringe after they got enough of it, trying to get the air bubbles out. Well, wait, if you get an air bubble in there, then you get a void, and then your seal's not good, and then you get food particles in underneath.
Yeah.
And after that, once you open it up, you start to pull it out, it starts to harden, it starts to, and then you can have contaminant in it, and this is an absolute huge risk. You could save $100, you could cost yourself, tens of thousands of dollars if this doesn't work.
Because
and the
of faulty products.
You go back to the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Because you got contamination in it. It's been exposed to glue. It's exposed to air. It's not exposed to air. And you've got these air bubbles in there. And there's no way. It's so thick. I'm not sure exactly how. I think the manufacturer has to probably put it under very high pressure and compress it to get the air out. Because it's thicker than honey. What would it be thick like? It's like peanut butter, almost.
Oh.
Okay. So it's very thick glue, and it has to be put out through high pressure in order to actually get it to run through the syringe. Not quite as thick as peanut butter, but it's between honey and peanut butter. So they wanted to reclaim it, and they were started to do this. And I said, absolutely, you cannot. The manufacturer says, don't. You'll contaminate it. You can't reuse it. And the cost to our reputation, to our customers and our product, and the amount of money you're going to save, $100, you're going to cost the company $100,000 or $50,000 or more. So there are times when you just have to say, no, you can't do this. If you want to use the glue for something else that's not quality critical, you can use it there, but not in this application. Mm. If somebody wants to take it home and use it for their product, for their, airplanes or whatever they want to glue, that's fine,
You can glue an airplane
just
together,
not in
but
our
you cannot
product.
glue this.
You cannot use this. It still sticks, it still works, but it's not durable, and it's not, you get air bubbles, but not in our product, not in our process. So there were a few things like that you had to come in and just say, no, you can't do this, you got to stop this, and because of the risk associated. But by and large, the Vietnamese team, the things they do very, very well. They are extremely good at optimization. They're extremely good at cost reduction. They're extremely good at space saving. The surface-mounted SMT process, they cut the switchover time between one board to another down to 15 minutes. We had a European team from Slovakia that came, and the Vietnamese team said, yeah, we have it down to 15 minutes. And the Slovakian team said, that's impossible. You can't do that. You just no way you can do that. And because it's like 2 to 3 hours in Slovakia at the time for them to switch a line over from one board to another. It's just a long, maybe it wasn't 2 or 3 hours. Maybe it was an hour to hour and a half, something like that. It was just a very long time. So they came and they recorded multiple switchovers in the SMT line in Vietnam, and they timed it at 15 minutes. And they said, we wouldn't have believed it if we hadn't seen it. And they said, even now we email our friends back in Slovakia, where the company has another site, and they don't believe us. Even now, after we've seen it, we're going to have to show them the video so they can actually see that it can be done. Mm. So every culture has, their strengths, and the Vietnamese team is very, very good at optimization. Mm. The U.S. team is much better at creative design and thinking outside the box. The Vietnam team is really good at, if you have a problem with the production group, if you have a problem, they want to apply it to everything. They're not really good at brand new problems. But many times they have a brand new problem, they don't know how to solve it, they need to send sample parts and things back to the U.S., back to the design center, where there's more experience, where the people who designed it understand why it was designed the way it was. So I find every culture has their different strengths and weaknesses. So, but for a factory, I think the Vietnamese culture is very, very good for running a factory.
Especially a manufacturing one.
Manufacturing type factory, they're very, very good. We're still working on improving the quality. The quality is good, but we need to make it better in certain areas. So we're down to working on the 1% failure rate, trying to push it to the next level, and that's a bit of a challenge because it requires thinking outside the box, and so it's back to the design center to do some of that work to help the factory to say, okay, this is what you need to do, factory, to improve the quality even higher. So yeah, I didn't interact, like I said, with the management team, but I did interact a lot with the people.
That's still great. That it doesn't matter. I'm still want to listen to stories like this, because at the management level, the stories and the problems is different to what the problems at a lower level. And yeah, I'm more interested in hearing stories like this, to be honest. And how did you bring this kind of experience back to the US, like after working in Vietnam and being exposed to the culture and the optimization and so on and so on? Like, how did you kind of like change yourself when you go back to the US?
Well, when I'm in meetings, and they bring me into a lot of meetings because I've been at the factory more than anybody else in the design center, in operations. So when they're talking about how, what's going on at the factory and how something's going to work, I can tell them they're not going to spend money. They're going to do it this way. I can envision without even seeing. I know how the factory is going to attack a problem because I've lived there. I know the culture. I'm not perfect in the culture, but I know a lot about it. So I say they're not going to do this. They're going to go this route, and explain if you want them to go a different route, you need to send them this tool and say use this tool, and that, so with the design engineers or the engineers that design, my team in the U.S. designs the manufacturing line. So now I am a supervisor. I came back to the U.S. and they rolled me up, promoted me to supervisor. So I supervise engineers. The engineering team I supervise designs the equipment that we use to build the product. So then we take that and say, okay, if there's a way that you can do it raw, you need to explain that when you're bringing the tools over, not to do it that way, or put in some safety checks so you can't put the parts in backwards in this press. It's going to press these parts together, something like that. You bring some of that knowledge back to the mechanical and the electrical team in the manufacturing group. So the designers, the R&D or new product development team comes to me and asks me about how the factory does things periodically, and the quality team comes to me and asks me about how things are done in the factory. So I'm more the conduit of, and if I don't know, I know who to email. Back on the Vietnam team. I still have their phone list. I still have their cell phones. I could call them on their cell phones and just talk to them directly, and I do that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll call Mr. Fat, or I'll call the operation or the AME or engineering manager Kang Lee, or I'll call the quality manager Fong Nguyen, or I'll call directly an engineer, and it's fun just to call them on their cell phones and chat and get caught up. And how are you doing? And how are your children? It's Khan Ko Khan Kwea Kom. How are your children? It's fun. Yeah. So I have fun, and when they come here and visit, we have the Vietnamese engineers before. When we bring out a new product line, we have a couple of them come, and we have a kind of not a real setup for a production line, but we build some product with the tools, and they get to see the tools and document the tools so they can write the method sheets back in, the instructions back into Vietnamese. But they come here, and I have them over for dinner. We take them out. We just do some fun things in the U.S. with them. The last two that came, one of the engineers, he lives on a farm, and he's got big tractors, and his dad owns a big farm. And they took him out, and they went shooting. They had these skeets. They shoot up in the air, and they were shooting skeets with rifles and pistols, and they had a blast because they'd never shot guns in their life. So they just had a wonderful time. Other times we take them up to the snow. Many of them, from Ho Chi Minh, you don't see snow. You're not going to see snow.
Yep. I mean, I see snow 6 months of 12 months now, so I'm good. Yeah. I'm good.
You're good with it. You're good.
I'm good. I have enough.
I'm sure you do.
I have enough. Sick of it.
Yeah. I would think you would be. But so we bring them here. We have do fun things, but they come and they learn the manufacturing line, and then I usually take them out shopping, and I've adjusted. When they're here, they'll come up and they'll hold my hand, and that's normal in Vietnamese culture. Two men walking together holding hands. And in Vietnam, it didn't bother me. Here, I go with it. Even though it looks a little weird in the U.S. culture, I know, and it's okay. I'm okay with it. But people look at me weird when I have a Vietnamese guy holding my hand.
I don't hold anyone's hand. I mean, when I was a kid, yeah, but when after high school, after fourth grade, I don't think I ever hold any guy's hand before. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or not, or it's just because the older generation think differently to the younger generation.
Yeah.
I can explain that the younger generation probably exposed to the Western ideology of like men and women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea of holding hand of the other man kind of like become a thing of the past. I don't think you find people doing that anymore in Vietnam.
There's a couple. There's not very many, but there's a couple that guys in the factory that really like me a lot. That are, I've done a lot of good things for them. I've gone out of my way to help them, and they will come up and grab my hand and hold my hand. But not very many. There's a few. So, but when they're here, they do that, and I feel a little. In this culture, I feel a little awkward, but I understand it, so I go with it.
Yep.
So that's one of the things I've changed a lot in just being receptive to different cultures and the way they do things. And in the West, we hug. Vietnam, they don't hug that much. But when I left, when I was leaving Vietnam, moving away, I had a ton of people come hug me. The Vietnamese.
Oh yeah, I would hug you.
I had guys hugging me, plant managers, Mr. Kang. I mean, they were all hugging me, guys and gals both.
Yeah.
Saying they were going to miss me, and they gave me lots of little presents and photo books and all sorts of fun things so I can remember my time there with them. So
yeah,
they're a very kind, very sweet culture. They're much more family-oriented than Americans are. Americans are family-oriented, but Vietnamese just want to do everything in groups. And U.S. guys, they want to do it in their nuclear family. They don't go do everything with their full extended family. Where, when I'm there, they always want to do things together.
Yeah.
So I've become more group-oriented here, and I try to bring even my extended family together and do more things and pull them in and do things as groups more. So I've changed in that way, too. So I've learned from the Vietnamese, and how they one child grows up, and then they go to college, and they use that money. If their parents don't have the money, they use their money to fund the next child to go to college. They will live very meagerly and just throw that money at the next sibling so that they can go to college. So they're all caring for one another in self-sacrificing much more than most Americans will. So their commitment to their family, to their siblings, is to be applauded. So I mean, American families, they take care of their kids, but not to the same commitment level. As there's more here. Your kids can go off and they can go get school loans. There's more things they can do. They don't need the parents as much to get ahead as they do in the Vietnamese culture. It would be hard for a Vietnamese child to come up and go earn and work their way through college to do that on their own without financial support from their parents. Where when I grew up, I had to do it all on my own. I went 5 years, got my engineering degree without any support from my parents. It was, but you could do it because it's a little more affluent society.
Also, you can do the same in Vietnam, but it's not recommended.
You can do that now?
I mean, like the government still gives scholarship, and you can get a part-time job to like help with your study, but it's not recommended for a kid to move out away from the family so early, because the idea of collectivism is that you spend more time with your family, and even when you graduate school, you have wife, you have children, it's still advised that you spend time with your mom and dad because it's a respectful thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very like a deep down kind of culture, kind of like, you know, Confucius kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That children should spend time with their parents, especially when the parents are kind of like 60 or 70 years old and kind of feel lonely, and the children are expected to take care of the parents. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to think at the factory. Another thing I can think.
Yeah.
I mean, in the factory, a few times I had some of the women wanted to invite me out for coffee, and I said, well, if I can bring my wife, and then they said, no, thank you. So I had a lot of that too, So I had, I don't go out with women unless they're, I'm with my wife. I don't go out with other women that aren't my wife alone. So that's just something I adopted years ago, and so there's some differences in the culture there because, I had that kind of thing. And even back when I came back to the U.S., when I went off to a Vietnamese restaurant, and I'm saying, hey, I lived in Vietnam for, at that time, 2 years, and the first thing out of the lady's mouth, the owner, says, oh, did you have a girlfriend? And I go, no, I didn't have a girlfriend. I'm married. I don't have a girlfriend. And, so that kind of, there's a lot of that. It's just normal and accepted there. But for me, that's not part of my culture at all, to have a girlfriend and be married. So there's just differences that way.
Yeah.
And you just say, that's okay, that's their culture. That's not me, but that's their culture, and that's okay,
I don't know about this. Well, probably because I'm very different from, I kind of like, I grow up not in Vietnam.
And so you weren't in that culture, yeah. So
yeah, so I was kind of different. So my mom and dad are very strict about it. So different kind of like setup.
Yeah, so that's gotcha. So yeah, the culture there is a little different than it is on the western side, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can tell.
But you just accept the people as they are and love them and enjoy them and say, no, thank you, I'm happy with my wife, kind of thing. But that was pretty minor little stuff there. But it was different. It's just different cultural experience on the Vietnamese side versus the U.S. side. I'm trying to think. There's, so my overall experience was great. The people are great. The food is fantastic. Ho Chi Minh City is just a place where you can just have any kind of food very inexpensively, And Vietnam is a fun place to visit, and it's a place you could retire to because it's so inexpensive.
Okay, let me think of any other things. Well, going back to the workplace, do you think that it was a challenge for the local team to understand what you're saying because of the the language barrier, especially when you're like lower down in the when you're working with the engineers, you're not working with the managers, so the engineers English level is cannot be compared with the managers. So you think it was
it was tougher. There were some engineers, like I said, that understood fairly well, but even with them, you're not sure until you ask them what are you going to do, or what do you think I said? That was a challenge. They did tell me my English was good. The other Chuck Orlick, they said, he has bad English. We can't understand him.
He's from the East Coast. I don't think so.
they told me, Randy, you have good English. Chuck has bad English. He has a little bit of a twang from Virginia back east, just a slight twang, and that little bit of twang made it hard for them to understand him.
For
me, it's a slight accent, but that slight accent was really difficult for them. He jokes about it. They said, "Yeah, you got bad English, Chuck, and Randy's got really good English." The Vietnamese understand the California, Oregon, the Western brogue, or the slight accent, the accent that I have, because that's what they've seen from Hollywood and, all the things they see, almost all of them, that's the predominant accent they hear when they watch things. So for me, they're going, wow, you're easy, as far as understanding the sounds that I'm saying and what I'm trying to say. But the words, they may not understand the words. That's different.
Or the meaning.
The meaning behind them. So I found I had to just simplify things down, use simple terms, and sometimes I couldn't get the subtleties. Sometimes you just can't get it. So you have to just say, okay, do this. This is how you do it. Write it down on a piece of paper, something like that. But yeah, they had difficulty understanding my meaning, and I had to, again, make it simple, because if I got into the subtleties, they wouldn't get it. So.
Okay, so language problem.
Yeah, it's always a language problem because they, and you got to drop idioms, you got to drop analogies, you got to drop all sorts of things that you can use to communicate in your native culture. You got to just throw those out. Straightforward, basic, simple English.
Yeah, like really simple English. Otherwise, they won't get it.
Yep. Yeah.
So you have to remove like all the slangs. That must be hard for you, especially like when you come from Eugene and you kind of grow up.
Because you don't even know you're speaking slang sometimes.
Yeah, you don't even know you're speaking slang sometimes. Exactly. Yeah.
And then when they don't get it, you go, let me think. Oh, you don't get the term jumping off a bridge. You don't know what that means, or you don't know these terms. So, okay.
Well, jumping off the bridge means exactly what it means. It means you.
Yeah.
It means you just commit suicide.
Yeah, that's right. So you just have to forget all those things, and sometimes you don't even, like I said, you don't know you're doing it until they try to explain what you said, and you go, oh, wow, you took it literal. I didn't use that term, jumping off a bridge with them, but I used other ones. And so then you go back, oh, they're taking it literally. Okay, so then you have to go, when I'm going to communicate, I have to speak very literally on these things. Unless you're talking to a manager, then they can get more of the subtleties, and then you're okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So there's a language problem. There's the different kind of approach to solving a problem. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned, they're better at optimization, but they're not very good at being original or being start from scratch. Like, that's not that thing. That's not that thing at all. Like dealing with design problem, dealing with like things that they never met before. They will run into problem.
Their schooling is more of a rote. You memorize things, and they're not taught. I mean, maybe in some of the colleges they are now, but their basic elementary, I've been told by them, it's just memorization, and this is the way you do things, and this is the way you solve a problem. Where when you're tasked to solve something you've never seen before, it's difficult for them. Some engineers there can do it, but many of them can't. So it's just, that's their weakness. And if you know their weakness, then that's where we come in, we support. So you just know what kind of problems are going to be easy for them and what kind of problems are going to be hard. And then you take over the ones that are more difficult for them to deal with. So you learn which, how to separate out to let them work on it versus when you need to pull it back and say, no, we're going to take this back to the design team. So you learn to separate things out, which culture is going to do better with which kind of problem.
So it's kind of like a good thing is that you can have different departments with different nationality. It's just, okay, if you need to be optimized, it to be solving manufacturing problem, you go to the Vietnamese team. But if you need something with the design, then you go back to the American team. And you'll be the guy in the middle coordinating it. Like, try like a translator.
Yep, translating the problem back and forth, and then figuring out which person on which team this problem should go to, and helping to make sure the problem is accurately communicated either from the Vietnamese side to the U.S. side or from the U.S. side back to the Vietnamese side. And then closing the loop, knowing to ask the questions, what do you think I said? What are you going to do? What do you think the problem is? And then making sure that both sides understand the problem and understand what we're trying to do to solve it.
So could you agree that having a foreigner like American, like you, stationed in Vietnam to be the communicator would be better than having you stationed in America coordinating with the Vietnamese team? What do you think?
Oh, much better.
Much better to have you in the Vietnam.
10 times better. They in 2011 they asked me to move to Vietnam for 1 year. They said this is a short-term assignment for 1 year. And we went there for 2 weeks and we said, okay, we could move here. And so we went for 1 year. Then they asked us to stay another year. Then they asked us to stay another year and a half. Then they asked us to stay another year. So the company found it so valuable, they kept asking us to stay longer and longer and longer. And even at the end of 4.5 years, my manager back in the U.S. said, the only reason I'm asking you to come back, I need you there and I need you here. I've lost some people and I've been trying for 2 years to hire and I haven't been able to get anybody to hire. I really need you back in the U.S., but I also need you to stay in Vietnam. But I need you more back in the U.S. because I'm just not able to get anybody right now in this position. So they brought me back at that point. But had they been able to get staffing, they would have left me there and asked me to stay longer because they found it so valuable to have me there, even though the cost is phenomenal. My base salary, in order to keep me there and pay the Vietnamese taxes and the U.S. taxes and pay for our housing and pay for flights back to the U.S. almost doubles my salary. I mean, I didn't see any more money. I saw the same amount of money, but the cost of the company just about doubled. It was an incredible amount of money to have an expat live there, but it was worth it. The company felt that even paying that much money, having somebody there, it was that valuable that they were willing to spend a boatload of money to have an expat living on site. So yeah, I found it was valuable, and the company obviously did because they wouldn't be spending that kind of money if they didn't.
Definitely better. Okay. Yeah, I just got that down. Okay, let's see what else. Well, to be honest, I think we should conclude the interview, so you have time to do something else because it's already over.
Yeah, I need to head off. Yeah, it's over. It's almost an hour now, so I need to get ready to head off.
Okay.
Well, my engagements.
That was a really good interview. Thank you so much for agreeing and conducting this interview with me.
Yeah, when you do your paper, could you email me a copy?
Oh, sure, no problem. So many people asking me for a copy because Brad West is also asking yeah, now you also asking for it.
Oh yeah, it'll be good to see your summary on it too. The full write up to see it from different people's viewpoints will be fun too.
Yeah, it'll be a very long written report, so I hope you can read it all.
Oh, I'm sure I can.
Sure. Yep. Thanks, and have a nice day to you. Thank you, Randy.
So, Yui, chúc một ngày vui vẻ.
Yep, and chúc một buổi sáng vui vẻ.
Come on.
Yep, cảm ơn. Ciao.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.